Before the first note left his lips, the entire auditorium was already judging him. A small, thin boy stood alone under the blinding stage lights of America's Got Talent. His shoes were worn at the edges. His sleeves were slightly too short for his arms. In his trembling hands, he held not a microphone of confidence, but a lifetime of struggle. And by the end of this performance, Simon Cowell would be fighting back tears. But before we begin, if you believe that talent has no address, no bank balance, and no boundaries, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this prove that sometimes, the greatest voices come from the most unexpected places. His name was Mateo Reyes. 14 years old. From Manila, Philippines. Every morning before the sun rose, Mateo would sit on a wooden crate near a busy jeepney terminal, polishing shoes for coins. His father had passed away when he was 9. His mother worked long hours washing laundry for neighbors. Mateo became the man of the house before he even understood what that meant. He didn't complain. He sang. As he brushed dust off leather shoes, he sang old Filipino songs his father used to hum. Jeepney drivers would pause. Vendors would smile. Sometimes customers gave him extra coins, not for the shine, but for the voice. One afternoon, a tourist recorded him singing Lupang Hinirang, the Philippine national anthem, while waiting for his shoes to dry. The video went viral back home. People were stunned not just by his powerful tenor voice, but by the pride and emotion in every word. Months later, through a charity sponsor, Mateo found himself holding a plane ticket to Los Angeles. Backstage at AGT, everything felt unreal. The lights. The cameras. The nervous contestants pacing back and forth. Mateo stood quietly in a borrowed white barong shirt, neatly pressed, paired with simple black trousers. His hair was combed carefully to the side, though a stubborn strand kept falling over his forehead. When his name was called, his heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear the applause. He walked onto the massive stage. The judges smiled politely. "How are you, young man?" Simon asked, leaning forward. Mateo swallowed. I'm good, sir. What's your name?" "Mateo Reyes. I'm 14. From the Philippines." The audience cheered warmly. "And what will you be performing tonight?" Simon asked. Mateo hesitated just a second. "I will sing Lupang Hinirang. It's my country's national anthem." There was a brief silence. A national anthem? On a competition stage known for pop hits and powerhouse ballads? Some audience members exchanged uncertain looks. Simon raised an eyebrow. "That's a big song. Why that one?" Mateo's fingers tightened around the microphone. "Because, my father told me, when you sing it, you must sing like you are telling the world who you are." The room shifted. Something about his voice carried weight far beyond his age. The music began. Softly at first. Mateo closed his eyes. And then he sang. The first note was pure. Crystal clear. It floated across the auditorium like a prayer. Conversations stopped. Phones lowered. The second line grew stronger. His voice wasn't just technically impressive, it was filled with longing, pride, pain, and hope. Every lyric sounded like it carried memories of dusty streets, early mornings, and unspoken promises. As the melody rose, so did his confidence. His small frame seemed to expand with each powerful note. The anthem swelled, and Mateo delivered the high notes with breathtaking control, his voice echoing like it belonged in a grand cathedral rather than a shoe-shining stand. The audience began to rise slowly, one by one. On stage, Mateo wasn't a shoeshiner anymore. He was a symbol. Cut to Simon Cowell. His usual composed expression had softened. His jaw tightened slightly as he blinked more than usual. The final note rang out, strong, unwavering, proud. Silence. One heartbeat. Two. And then the entire auditorium exploded. A standing ovation. Thunderous applause. cheers that shook the walls. Mateo opened his eyes, startled by the noise. For a second, he looked overwhelmed, as if he couldn't understand why thousands of strangers were clapping for him. The camera zoomed in on Simon. He cleared his throat. That, Simon began slowly, was one of the most heartfelt performances we've ever had on this stage. His voice cracked ever so slightly. You didn't just sing a song. You told a story. And I think everyone here felt it. Mateo's eyes began to glisten. Heidi leaned forward. I don't even understand the language fully, but I felt every word. Howie added, you remind us why we have this show. Talent like yours deserves the biggest stage in the world. Simon looked down briefly, composing himself. You know, he said, sometimes people think this competition is about big voices and flashy moments. But tonight, you gave us something rare. You gave us truth. The crowd roared again. And then Simon did something unexpected. He stood up. He walked toward the golden buzzer. Mateo's breath caught. Simon looked back at him one more time. This is for every kid out there who thinks their dreams are too small. He slammed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti rained from the ceiling. Mateo froze as it fell around him like a dream made visible. His hands flew to his face. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Back home in Manila, the entire neighborhood gathered around a small television inside a sari-sari store. When the golden confetti fell, they screamed with pride. His mother collapsed into a chair, crying and laughing at the same time. On stage, Simon walked up and hugged Mateo gently. You made your father proud, Simon whispered. Mateo nodded, unable to speak. In the weeks that followed, Mateo's story spread worldwide. News outlets called him the voice of pride. Donations poured in for his family. But what mattered most to him wasn't the fame. It was the message. In interviews, Mateo would say, I was just a boy shining shoes. But I learned that even when you are small, your voice can still be big. His journey on AGT continued, each performance stronger than the last. But nothing would ever match the raw, unforgettable moment when a shoeshiner stood tall and sang for his country. Because that night wasn't just about music. It was about dignity. It was about identity. It was about reminding the world that greatness can rise from sidewalks, from struggle, from sacrifice. And maybe someone watching right now feels like Mateo once did, overlooked, underestimated, unheard. If that's you, remember this, your circumstances do not define your ceiling. Your voice, whatever it may be, is powerful. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable journeys like Mateo's. Because sometimes, all it takes is one brave note to change everything. Before the lights dimmed, before the judges even knew his name, a boy who once knelt on the streets polishing strangers' shoes was about to make one of the toughest men in entertainment wipe away tears. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why. So if you believe that dreams don't belong only to the rich or the famous, take a second right now to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this remind us that greatness can rise from anywhere. His name was Rafael Rafi Cruz. 15 years old. Thin shoulders. Calloused hands. A quiet smile that hid years of struggle. Every morning in Quezon City, Rafi would set up his small wooden shoeshine box near a busy overpass. While the city rushed to work, he knelt on the pavement, polishing leather shoes until they reflected the sky above him. Some customers noticed his soft humming. Most didn't. But Rafi always sang. He sang to pass the time. He sang to forget the heat. He sang because his late grandfather once told him, when life makes you kneel, sing so your spirit can still stand. His father had left when he was young. His mother sold vegetables in the market. Money was never enough. School became a luxury. Responsibility became his childhood. One humid afternoon, as Rafi sang Lupang Hinirang while working, a local blogger passing by stopped in her tracks. The anthem, usually heard at ceremonies, sounded different coming from a barefoot boy on concrete. There was pride in it. Pain in it. Hope in it. She recorded him. Within days, the video spread across the Philippines. Comments flooded in. Why is he on the street? This voice deserves a stage. Someone send him to AGT. Through community support and a non-profit organization, Rafi was given the chance of a lifetime, an audition for America's Got Talent. The flight to Los Angeles was his first time on an airplane. He pressed his forehead against the window the entire time, watching clouds drift below him like fields of cotton. He whispered to himself, "Lolo, I'm going to sing for us." Backstage at AGT was overwhelming. Contestants in glittering costumes, dancers stretching, magicians rehearsing tricks. Rafi stood in a simple cream-colored barong Tagalog, neatly ironed but clearly modest. Black slacks slightly loose at the waist. Hair trimmed short on the sides, slightly wavy on top. His hands trembled. A producer asked, "Are you nervous?" He nodded. Yes, but more excited. When his name echoed through the speakers, Rafi stepped into the spotlight. The auditorium looked endless. Simon Cowell glanced at his card. Rafael Cruz. 15. From the Philippines. Simon looked up. What do you do back home, Rafael? Rafi took a breath. I shine shoes, sir. A murmur moved through the crowd. Simon tilted his head slightly. And what are you singing today? Lupang Hinirang, sir. For my country. Simon paused. That's a brave choice. Rafi nodded gently. It's the song that reminds me who I am. The music began, soft orchestration filling the thea. The judges were ready to be impressed. They were not ready to be moved. When the skinny Filipino teenager walked onto the America's Got Talent stage, holding the microphone with hands that had scrubbed dust and dirt from thousands of shoes, no one expected that in less than 3 minutes. Simon Cowell would struggle to keep his composure. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why the entire world stood still for his voice. Before we begin, if you believe that talent can rise from the streets to the biggest stages in the world, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this deserve to be heard and shared. His name was Daniel Valdez. 16 years old. Born in Tanda, Manila, an area known more for hardship than opportunity. Every morning before school, Daniel would carry a small wooden shoeshine box to a crowded sidewalk near the port. The air smelled of gasoline and salt water. Jeepneys roared past. Vendors shouted over each other. And there he would sit, calling out politely to passers-by, "Pa shine pa." Some days were good. Most weren't. His father had been a fisherman who disappeared during a storm when Daniel was 12. His mother cleaned houses. Daniel became the extra pair of hands the family needed. School in the afternoon. Shoeshining at dawn and dusk. But Daniel carried something inside him that the noise of the city couldn't drown out. A voice. He didn't train formally. He didn't have a vocal coach. What he had was memory. His father used to stand during flag ceremonies and sing Lupang Hinirang with his hand firmly on his chest, eyes closed, as if speaking directly to heaven. Sing it with respect, his father once told him. It's not just a song. It's who we are. Years later, Daniel would remember those words as he stood backstage at AGT in Los Angeles. The journey there had felt impossible. A tourist had recorded him singing the national anthem one morning while shining shoes. The video captured more than just a melody, it captured a boy pouring his heart into every note. It went viral. Donations were raised. Papers were processed. And somehow, against all odds, Daniel was invited to audition. Backstage, contestants wore sparkling jackets and designer outfits. Daniel wore a simple white barong Tagalog his mother had carefully folded into his suitcase. Black slacks. Slightly worn dress shoes donated by a neighbor. His hair neatly trimmed, a soft wave falling over his forehead. He whispered to himself, "For Papa." When he stepped onto the stage, the applause was polite. Simon Cowell glanced at him with curiosity. "What's your name?" "Daniel Valdez, sir." "I'm 16. From the Philippines." The audience cheered warmly. "And what do you do back home, Daniel?" Daniel hesitated for a moment, then answered honestly. "I shine shoes, sir." A ripple moved through the crowd. Simon nodded slowly. "And what are you going to sing?" Daniel lifted his chin slightly. "Lupang Hinirang. Our national anthem." Simon raised his brows. "That's a big risk." Daniel's voice was steady now. "It's the song that reminds me not to give up." The music began softly. For a second, the theater felt too large. Too intimidating. Then Daniel sang. The first note was gentle but perfectly controlled. Clear as glass. The second line carried warmth. By the third, something had shifted in the room. He wasn't performing. He was declaring. Every word sounded like it had traveled thousands of miles. His tone carried longing, pride, and quiet resilience. As the melody climbed, so did his confidence. His chest rose. His shoulders straightened. The high note approached the part that demands strength and control. Daniel closed his eyes and let it soar. It was powerful. Effortless. It echoed through the auditorium like a bell ringing across water. The audience gasped. Camera cut to Heidi, hand covering her mouth. Howie leaned forward, stunned. Simon's expression changed completely. His eyes glistened under the stage lights. Daniel reached the final line, voice unwavering, filled with reverence. He held the last note just long enough to send chills through the crowd before releasing it gently into silence. For a split second, there was nothing. No clapping. No shouting. Just stunned quiet. Then the entire audience rose to their feet in a thunderous standing ovation. Daniel blinked, overwhelmed. Simon leaned forward, clearing his throat before speaking. "You know, Daniel," Simon began, his voice unusually soft, "we see a lot of singers here." He paused, swallowing emotion. "But very rarely do we see someone sing with that much heart." The crowd cheered again. Simon continued, "When you told us you shine shoes, I imagined you looking down most of the day." He gestured toward Daniel. "But tonight, you made every single one of us look up." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Heidi added, "It felt like you were carrying your entire country in your voice." Howie nodded. "That was beautiful. Truly beautiful." Simon took a deep breath and stood up. The audience sensed it immediately. He walked slowly toward the golden buzzer. Daniel's hands began to shake. Simon looked at him and said quietly, "This is why we love this show. Because sometimes, someone walks in who reminds us what courage sounds like." And he pressed it. Golden confetti burst from above, showering Daniel in shimmering light. He dropped to his knees, not in exhaustion, but in gratitude. The same position he had taken on sidewalks for years. But this time, the world was applauding him. Simon walked onto the stage and helped him stand. "You deserve this," Simon whispered. Back in Manila, neighbors crowded around a television set outside a small convenience store. When the golden buzzer flashed, cheers echoed down narrow streets. His mother sobbed openly, whispering her husband's name through tears. Daniel would later say in an interview, "I used to polish shoes so people could walk proudly. Now I sing so people can stand proudly." His story spread across continents, not because he was flashy, not because he was dramatic, but because he was real. He reminded millions that dignity is not measured by your job. That dreams do not require permission. That your beginnings do not dictate your ending. And maybe right now, someone watching feels small. Feels unseen. Feels like life has kept them kneeling on cold pavement. Remember Daniel. Remember that the same hands that worked in silence can one day hold a microphone. If this story inspired you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful journeys that prove dreams are still alive. Because sometimes, the most unforgettable voices don't come from luxury. They rise from the streets. And when they sing, even Simon Cowell fights back tears. The night America's Got Talent almost broke Simon Cowell, it wasn't because of a magic trick, or a viral pop cover, or a stage explosion. It was because of a barefoot memory carried in the voice of a Filipino shoeshiner. And before this story ends, you'll see how one simple anthem turned into a moment the world would never forget. If you believe talent has no social class, no borders, and no limits, pause for 1 second, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this deserve to travel far. His name was Andres Villanueva. 17 years old. From Cebu City. Thin but strong from years of work. Quiet eyes that had seen more struggle than celebration. Every dawn, while most teenagers were still asleep, Andres was already awake. He would carry his wooden shoeshine kit to Fuente Osmeña's circle, kneel beside businessmen and tourists, and begin polishing. The sound of brushing leather became the rhythm of his mornings. He worked fast. Respectful. Silent. But inside, he wasn't silent at all. He sang. Not loudly. Not for attention. Just enough for himself. Old Kundiman songs. Church hymns. And most of all, Lupang Hinirang, the Philippine national anthem. His father, a former soldier, had taught him to stand straight whenever it played. This song, his father used to say, is not about how rich we are. It's about how strong we are. When his father passed away from illness 2 years later, Andres stopped singing for a while. Life became heavier. His mother worked as a seamstress. Bills piled up. Andres left school to help. But one Independence Day morning, as a small flag-raising ceremony took place near the park, the anthem began playing through old speakers. Without thinking, Andres stood up from where he was kneeling, placed his hand over his chest, and sang. People turned. The power in his voice didn't match his thin frame. It was deep, resonant, steady. Someone recorded it. Within weeks, that video reached millions online. Comments poured in. This boy deserves a stage. His voice carries history. Send him to AGT. Through sponsors and community donations, Andres found himself boarding a plane to Los Angeles. Backstage at AGT, everything felt larger than life. Bright lights. Cameras. Contestants rehearsing high-energy numbers. Andres stood in a simple ivory barong, long sleeves buttoned neatly, paired with black trousers and polished second-hand shoes. His hair was neatly combed back, revealing a calm but nervous face. A producer asked him, "Why AGT?" He answered softly, "Because my father believed Filipinos can stand anywhere in the world with pride." When he stepped onto the stage, the audience applauded politely. Simon glanced at his card. Andres Villanueva. 17. From the Philippines. Simon looked up. "What do you do back home?" "I shine shoes, sir." A ripple moved through the audience. "And what are you singing tonight?" "Lupang Hinirang, sir." Simon leaned back slightly. "That's a bold choice." Andres nodded. "It's the song that reminds me to stand tall, even when I kneel." The room grew quiet. The first note of the instrumental played, soft strings filling the theater. The judges thought they had seen everything. Golden buzzers. Standing ovations. Viral sensations. But they were not prepared for the night a Filipino shoeshiner walked onto the AGT stage and made Simon Cowell quietly wipe his eyes. And before this story ends, you'll understand why that moment didn't just change his life, it changed everyone watching. If you believe that no dream is too small and no beginning is too humble, take a second right now to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this remind us that hope is still alive. His name was Miguel Santiago. 16 years old. From a narrow alley in Manila where houses leaned against each other like tired neighbors. Tin roofs. Cracked walls. Laughter mixed with struggle. Every day after school, Miguel carried a faded red shoeshine box to Rizal Park. He would kneel on flattened cardboard, calling out softly to passing strangers. Some ignored him. Some pitied him. A few became regular customers. While his hands worked, his voice would rise. Not loudly, but steadily. He sang to make the hours shorter. He sang to keep his father's memory alive. His father, a jeepney driver, had loved music. On Sundays, they would stand together during the flag ceremony at the barangay plaza and sing Lupang Hinirang with pride. When you sing this, his father used to say, you're not just singing for yourself. You're singing for every Filipino who refuses to give up. After his father passed away from a heart condition, Miguel became quieter. Responsibility came fast. Childhood left early. But the anthem remained his anchor. One afternoon, a Filipino-American tourist stopped when she heard Miguel singing while polishing her husband's shoes. She didn't just hear a good voice. She heard control. Emotion. Strength beyond his years. She recorded him. That video reached overseas Filipino communities. Donations started coming in. A foundation stepped in. Months later, Miguel stood backstage at America's Got Talent, holding a microphone instead of a shoeshine brush. The stage lights felt blinding. The theater seemed endless. He wore a simple cream barong Tagalog, sleeves neatly pressed. Black trousers slightly long at the ankles. Borrowed leather shoes polished so carefully they reflected the stage lights. His black hair was neatly trimmed, parted slightly to the side. His hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of the moment. When his name was called, he stepped forward. The applause was warm but cautious. Simon glanced at him. What's your name? Miguel Santiago, sir. And how old are you? 16. Where are you from? The Philippines. The crowd cheered. Simon leaned forward. And what do you do back home? Miguel swallowed. I shine shoes, sir. A murmur moved through the audience. And what are you singing tonight? Miguel lifted his chin slightly. Lupang Hinirang. Simon raised his brows. Your national anthem? Yes, sir. Simon paused. That's a brave song choice. Miguel nodded. It reminds me that even if life is hard, we are still strong. The music began, soft orchestral strings filling the air. Miguel closed his eyes. The first note was gentle, almost fragile. Then it grew. Clear. Steady. Pure. The audience shifted in their seats. By the second verse, something changed. His voice wasn't just technically impressive, it was emotional. Each word carried history. Each phrase felt like a promise. When he reached the higher register, his voice soared effortlessly, echoing through the theater with power that seemed impossible from his slender frame. He wasn't singing to impress. He was singing to honor. The camera cut to Heidi, eyes glistening. Howie leaned back, visibly moved. Simon's usual analytical stare softened. His jaw tightened as he listened carefully. Miguel approached the climax of the anthem. He opened his eyes. And he delivered the final lines with unwavering strength, holding the last note just long enough to send chills through the entire auditorium. Silence. Complete silence. And then the theater erupted. A standing ovation crashed over him like a wave. Thousands of people on their feet, clapping, cheering. Miguel looked stunned. He blinked rapidly as tears filled his eyes. Simon took a breath before speaking. You know, Miguel, he began quietly, we've had many singers perform here. He paused. But very few make this room feel united. The audience quieted. You didn't just sing beautifully. You sang with pride. With dignity. With heart. Simon's voice wavered slightly. When you told us you shine shoes, I imagined you looking down most of the day. He pointed toward Miguel. But tonight, you made the entire world look up at you. Miguel covered his mouth, overwhelmed. Heidi added softly, that was one of the most sincere performances I've ever heard. Howie nodded. You reminded us why music matters. Simon stood up slowly. The crowd gasped. He walked toward the golden buzzer, then turned back. This, Simon said, his voice steady but emotional, is exactly why this show exists. And he pressed it. Gold confetti exploded from above, raining down like sunlight. Miguel dropped to his knees, the same way he had knelt thousands of times on concrete sidewalks, but this time, the floor beneath him was covered in gold. Simon walked up and gently helped him stand. Your father would be proud, Simon whispered. Back in Manila, neighbors gathered around a small television inside a sari-sari store. When the golden buzzer flashed, cheers echoed through the narrow streets. His mother cried openly, hands trembling as she watched her son covered in gold. In interviews later, Miguel said something that stayed with millions. I used to polish shoes so people could walk confidently, he said. Now I sing so people can stand confidently. His journey continued. But that audition became unforgettable. Because it wasn't about poverty. It wasn't about sympathy. It was about strength. About pride. About proving that even if life places you on your knees, your voice can still rise. And maybe right now, you feel small. Overlooked. Tired. Remember Miguel. Remember that where you start does not decide where you finish. If this story moved you, like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful journeys that remind us that dreams are still possible. Because sometimes, the strongest voices come from the humblest streets. And when they sing, even Simon Cowell fights back tears. The audience expected another audition. What they didn't expect was a moment that would silence thousands of people at once. When the small Filipino boy stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, wearing a simple embroidered barong and shoes polished so carefully they almost shined brighter than the lights above him, no one knew that within minutes Simon Cowell would be blinking back tears. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why that night became more than just television. Before we go any further, if you believe that dreams can rise from the most unexpected places, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this deserve to be heard around the world. His name was Carlo Mendoza. 15 years old. From a crowded district in Manila where jeepneys roared and sidewalks were workplaces for children who grew up too fast. Every afternoon after school, Carlo would set up his wooden shoeshine kit outside a train station. He knelt on folded cardboard, calling out softly to commuters rushing home. His hands were quick and skilled, brushing, polishing, wiping until leather gleamed. But while his hands worked, his voice would quietly fill the air. Carlo didn't sing for attention. He sang because it made him feel taller than his circumstances. He sang because his mother used to tell him, when you sing, Anik, it sounds like you're praying. His father had left years earlier. His mother sold homemade snacks to survive. Carlo became her partner in survival. He learned early that dignity doesn't come from wealth, it comes from how you carry yourself. Every Monday morning at school, during the flag ceremony, Carlo would sing Lupang Hinirang louder than anyone else. Not to show off, but because something about the anthem stirred him. It reminded him that even if life felt small, he belonged to something bigger. One evening, as he sang while polishing a businessman's shoes, someone nearby recorded him. The video captured more than just a clear, powerful tenor voice, it captured emotion. Raw. Honest. Untrained but extraordinary. The video spread across social media in the Philippines. Comments flooded in. This boy needs a stage. He sings with pride. Send him to AGT. Through community fundraising and the help of a local sponsor, Carlo found himself stepping into an airport for the first time in his life. On the flight to Los Angeles, he barely slept. He kept replaying his mother's words in his mind, "No matter how big the stage, sing like you're standing in front of our flag." Backstage at AGT, everything felt overwhelming. Dancers in glittering costumes. Fire effects being tested. Loud rehearsals echoing in the halls. Carlo stood quietly in his cream-colored barong Tagalog, sleeves neatly buttoned, black trousers slightly long, hair trimmed short with a soft fringe falling over his forehead. His face showed nerves, but also determination. When his name was called, he walked into the spotlight. The auditorium was massive. Endless rows of faces. Simon glanced at him. "What's your name?" "Carlo Mendoza, sir." "And how old are you?" 15. "Where are you from?" "The Philippines." The audience cheered warmly. Simon leaned forward slightly. "And what will you be singing tonight?" Carlo swallowed. "Lupang Hinirang, sir." Simon raised an eyebrow. "Your national anthem?" "Yes, sir." "That's a big song," Simon said carefully. Carlo nodded. "It reminds me to stand P.